And so everywhere we went as the MJBA and everywhere that our clients who started growing pretty rapidly, we're up over, we're at 500 various cannabis businesses are paid members now of the MJBA. So we started following our businesses everywhere we went, to HempFest, to the various trade festivals, to creating our own seminars and filming and chronicling what was going on. We put that on YouTube on Marijuana Channel 1. So what we've seen now is we've created a repository. 3 years later, we have literally thousands and thousands of news stories in every subject. So you can go there and search Washington news or New York news or Ohio news, or you can search by keyword. Vivian McPeak, hey, what's that guy up to? Or what's going on with 280E? Or what's happening with California medical marijuana? And so by just aggregating the news, we've created a resource that mainstream media doesn't cover. So you can't do the same thing with Google. You can't do the same thing with any of the public search engines because there's just too much of it. But because we've tagged it and meta tagged it, and I learned that in my traditional media world. And then we've created a social media network so that all of the participants can communicate through Twitter and Instagram and Pinterest and all the various social media networks. So what we have now is hundreds of thousands of people within the cannabis community who are sharing information and sharing their feelings. That's a powerful thing, Vivian, and to connect. And so the world looks out and says, this is not just in my backyard. There's not just onesie twosies, but this is really a global phenomenon at this point.
Dave, the MJBA, or the Marijuana Business Association, is a member-driven trade organization. And there are cannabis-related business groups, associations, commissions, trade organizations sprouting up like leaves on an indica plant now that the hard work to reform from all the other similar organizations that are becoming commonplace. What do y'all do for your members that's unique?
It's an interesting thing being in the industry. I applaud folks getting involved. The notion that you should be part of groups, that you should join association is a simple one. It literally does take a village and you can't do it all yourself, right? So you need to band together with like-minded folks to pull in the same direction. It's the only way you get things done. The MJBA is different from most, if not all, of the other cannabis groups in that we are not fighting the legal fight. We're not focused on the medical efficacy. We're not talking about terpenes. We're not, lauding the various components within the plant. Those are things that are done by lots of great players. We feel like the biggest challenge to participants in legal cannabis is that they are under-resourced. They don't have the money. They don't have the intellectual capital. They don't have the staff or the support to run their businesses. So we want to talk to these legal cannabis businesses about business, about accounting, about product creation, about marketing, about distribution, about differentiation. So all those traditional boring business things that get lost because we're fighting a revolution.
So the MJBA, I know you've done meetups in Seattle, Tacoma, Vancouver, I think Spokane, and you also do vendor fairs, job fairs, I think professional education seminars. What goes on at these meetups?
Well, so the meetup, and you're right, we're now and we're in Bellingham, and we're starting them all over the state of Washington and Portland, Colorado. Those are the there. So if you are a business professional and you want to get involved in legal cannabis, the first question is, well, where do I go? Where do I sign up? Where do I meet other people? And that's the MJBA meetups. They're monthly meetups that are meant to be business-to-business networking groups. We share a little information. We have a couple of MJBA businesses get up and talk about themselves. And then we do news reports. We're proud to have supporters like HempFest, like Normal, like the Russ Belville Show, who come to our various meetups and deliver the news to the business community. And then we do networking and business exploration. So that's the meetups. The seminars are really drill downs. So we did one last Monday for Washington retailers, and we looked at all the sales numbers, who's selling what to whom for how much. and then allowed them to have some really in-depth panel discussions about what the implications were to their cannabis businesses. We'll do the same thing on November 10th in Spokane, Washington, with Washington State's biggest producer processors. Farms like Buddy Boy Farms and Triple T and Blue Roots Cannabis. We'll get together with folks like Landrace Labs and Vuber and Eden Labs and talk about the techniques and processes for growing good product, for servicing the market, and then maintaining profitability and scalability. They're pretty much all along all the spectrums that you could think about with business at the local level.
Okay, quickly, Dave, because I'm going to have to go to break and hear another word from the sponsor. What do you think the biggest prevailing myth is about cannabis business that you keep hearing? What's the biggest misconception floating around out there?
I think the biggest myth is that it is a slacker culture, that most of the folks in marijuana are there to smoke pot all day and that it's a big party. When in fact, and I'm a person who's worked in a lot of entrepreneurial industries, I've never seen such hardworking entrepreneurs as I've seen in legal cannabis.
Okay, and we can pick this up. Got another couple questions when we come back to the break. I'm talking to Dave Rhines from the Marijuana Business Association. We're going to take a quick pause. Hear from our sponsors. We'll be right back on Cannabis Radio.
Time to roll out for the people that let us hemp present. Hang loose. We're coming right back.
Dr. Dabber, hurry! Its temperature is shooting past 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's burning up.
I'm afraid for this little guy, it's just too late.
What caused the problem?
Only Dr. Dabber can maintain the perfect temperature for a smooth-tasting, slower burn. This standard vaporizer lost all of its health benefits, sending it up in smoke.
So you're telling me that most vapor pens burn so hot they produce smoke, not vapor?
Correct! Keep away from those standard vaporizer pens and turn to Dr. Dabber. Doctor's orders.
Less heat, more flavor.
Ganjapreneur.com, your guide to the cannabis business world. Ganjapreneur.com is a comprehensive resource for cannabis professionals and entrepreneurs. Download the Ganjapreneur app on your smartphone or tablet to catch up on cannabis industry news, scroll through our daily job listings, and learn about successful cannabis companies, executives, and investors. Ganjapreneur.com, helping Ganjapreneurs grow.
Chronicling the latest cannabis industry news and headlines.
Well, with 4 states with tax and regulate and the District of Columbia.
The state of cannabis.
Oh my God, it's refreshing. We have people that generally wouldn't speak on behalf of cannabis for fear of retribution, fear of losing your practices, fear of many of those things, and find ourselves in a place that we finally can.
Bringing you fact-based news and views and keeping listeners on the pulse of what's happening in the industry today. The state of cannabis. On demand anytime, only on CannabisRadio.com.
We're back to Hemp Present, only on Cannabis Radio. Now, back to our headstrong Emperor of Hemp, Vivian McPeak.
And we are back on Hemp Present on Cannabis Radio. We are winding the show down with a few more questions for Dave Rhines from the Marijuana Business Association. David, riffing off of that last comment you made, for a period in the 1990s, industrial hemp was very fashionable, but the novelty seemed to wear off after about a decade or so. Some say that was in part due to the poor design and construction of a lot of that industrial hemp clothing and products, but also because many of the business owners in that period's hemp industry were novices at business. In your experience, are things different this time? It seems like very seasoned business minds are racing to the cannabis industries right now.
Yeah, I look at these things as cyclical, as iterative. So this generation of hemp clothiers will be more successful than the last one, although I still think many of them are stylistically challenged. I'd like to see less tie-dye and more tailored hemp garb. I think hemp is a miraculous fabric, and we've just begun to explore the sartorial possibilities. But I think in terms of the caliber of the player, and yeah, that is kind of what I was suggesting, we're not a bunch of potheads, at least not a lot of slacker business types. What I've seen is this crop of business folks comes from across the business spectrum. I'm talking about folks from government, folks from law enforcement, folks from the traditional hemp and cannabis industry, and many of them from traditional industries like finance or big pharma or media and marketing. So I think what you've seen is some of our best and brightest have come into this segment, because what we haven't mentioned up to this point is cannabis industry represents the fastest growing industry in America. And it's one of the few bright spots of our whole economy. And there are not very many places where the kinds of job creation and product innovation, the kinds of excitement. And I think that's why you're seeing the National Geographics and the Times and the Newsweeks and the CNNs who are devoting more and more space and attention to this industry.
Dave Rhines, CEO of the MJBA, thanks so much for taking time out to talk with me today. How can people find out more about the Marijuana Business Association?
Well, you can always find us on the web, mjba.net. I would always encourage you to search for us online, mjnewsnetwork.com, or if you're on social media, MJ Headline News. It's always a good place. Or look for the local meetup.com near you.
Dave, thank you so much, bro, for being on Hemp Present on Cannabis Radio. It's always great talking to you. Good luck with all your endeavors, and I look forward to seeing you at the next meetup.
Thank you very much, Vivian. Peace.
Now I want to get to a weekly feature, Hemp Present on CannabisRadio.com, and that is the quote of the week, and here it goes. What is the different types of hash out there? We all know that it's called the bionic, the bomb, the puff, the blow, the black, the herb, the sensi, the chronic, the sweet Mary Jane, ganja, split, reefa, the bad, the Buddha, the homegrown, the ill, the Maui Maui, the method, pot, lethal turbo, Thai, shake, skunk, stress, wacky, weed, glaze, the boot, dime bag, Scooby-Doo, Bob Bogey, backyard boogie. Those are the immortal words of Ali G. That concludes this installment of Hemp Present on Cannabis Radio. I want to thank my folks in the control room, Brasco and Hannah, and my brave sponsors and producers. Join me next week for another Journey for Justice on hemppresent.com, because when it comes to prohibition, you have the right not to remain silent. Activism requires a voice, so find yours and speak up for justice. Until then, stay strong, stand tall, and toke it easy.
The opinions expressed on this CannabisRadio.com program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of CannabisRadio.com. Any rebroadcast or redistribution without proper consent of CannabisRadio.com is prohibited.
Ignite the conversation on some trending topics along the Cannabis Radio social media network. Join our crew of thousands on our Cannabis Radio page on Facebook or at Canna Radio, CANNA Radio on Twitter. Plus, look for our Facebook and Google Plus pages for all of our original programs and connect with Dr. Dina, Kyle Cushman, Dr. Mitch Earlywine, Nurse Heather, Doc Rob, the host of Ganjapreneur, and more. Connect with the growing Cannabis Radio social crusade at Canna Radio on Twitter or search for Cannabis Radio on Facebook, Google Plus, and Instagram and grow with us.
How high do you like your profit margin? CannabisRadio.com.
ABC News with Neil Nunes. The opposition leader in Myanmar, Aung San Suu Kyi, has said she will run the government if her party wins the country's first openly contested election in 25 years. Myanmar's military-drafted constitution bars her from the presidency, but she said she would head the government and appoint a president who would work in accordance with her party's policies. Britain's Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond has said there's a significant possibility that a bomb brought down the Russian airliner that crashed in Egypt on Saturday. Britain has suspended all flights to Sharm el-Sheikh from where the Russian plane took off. Egypt called the decision unwarranted. China's President Xi Jinping is beginning a two-day visit to Vietnam. It comes at a time of tensions between the two countries over disputed territory in the South China Sea. Sierra Leone has begun celebrations in the run-up to declaring the country free of Ebola on Saturday, but medical workers say up to 80% of those who survived the virus are suffering complications such as joint pains and fatigue. A court in Egypt is due today to begin a final retrial of the former President Hosni Mubarak. He is charged with complicity in the murders of hundreds of protesters during the uprising in 2011. There can be no appeal against the outcome of this retrial. The singer, Sir Elton John, has announced that his charitable foundation will donate $5 million to improve access to HIV therapies for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people in Africa. His donation will be matched by